Barcelona versus Alaves. I said that could be a tricky match, and it wasn't really tricky as much as it was strange. With a ton of lineup changes, things started happening in the first minute. Barcelona, they would find their footing, but then they would lose it again. Said it was a strange match. But overall, it was a good performance on Barcelona's 126th birthday. Welcome to episode 754 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and a big thank you, as always, to everybody that joined me on BigUp.com for the watch along today against Alaves. I, of course, will be joining you on Tuesday on Big Up for that watch along against Atletico Madrid. Yeah, it's a midweek, huge game. A little bit of a different story, but we'll see what happens there. Please, again, become a member for free over there so you know that I'm going live for Barcelona versus Atletico Madrid. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel because, yes, we have the matches, we have the watch-alongs, but there's also plenty of news happening around the holiday season. Speaking of the holidays, Patreon and the all-new merch store is the other best way to help me until I get some sponsors to continue to make shows like this. All right, with that out of the way, let's dive in. Here are the 3-1 headlines for Barcelona's victory over Alaves. Headline 1, before you blink. With Frankie de Jong away for family reasons, hope everything's okay, and Pedri still unable to start, finally getting back into the squad, which is great to see. Hansi Flick was still a bit short on midfield options, so enter Marc Casado and Marc Bernal, who, regardless of his performance, saying what you thought of it, I thought it was, 50-50. We could have seen better from him. He still got his first start in 15 months, which is really good to see for Bernal. As I've always said with teenage players, I think when they give you something good, you kind of take that and you work with it. And for a guy still recovering from an ACL injury, it's great to see. And also returning to the starting lineup was Raphinha, who gave us nothing but positives today. Either way, the team was not ready to defend a set piece because we are just 1 minute in and Barcelona are already conceding. It's on a corner kick. Casado tried to clear it, but it goes across the goal. A poke at the far post around Bernal. Maybe Bernal had it deflect off him. But either way, Ibanez taps it in with Casado keeping him onside. What's crazy about this first minute goal for Alaves, it's not even their quickest goal at Barcelona's home stadium in the last 2 seasons. It was Samo in 18 seconds 2 years ago. So yeah, they don't even make history scoring within the first minute. And now Barcelona, in theory, are on their back heels. But I was pleasantly surprised because Barcelona quickly answered. To Alaves' credit, they did not sit in a low block, which they knew with 90 plus minutes of game time left, counting stoppage time, would not yield the results they wanted because that's not how they play normally. And I've loved to see that around the Liga this season. Instead of just digging in your heels, teams are playing the way they want to play, and that is getting them more results against, we'll say, the bigger teams. Maybe the numbers don't bear fruit, but at least the eye product does. I feel like teams are playing more impassioned football against bigger sides because they're not just settling in and defending for their lives to get a result. There is a time and a place to do that, but I like the fact that Alaves continued to go for this game, and they could have got a result from this one, and they would have earned that result. But the fact of the matter is Barcelona are more talented. And as I said, to their credit, Alaves did get some more chances in this game. But to Barcelona's credit, their response in this one was almost immediate. Headline 2, Lamine Yamal cleanup duty. I feel like you could actually in real time watch Barcelona shake some of those nerves off, especially with Casado and Bernal. By the 7th minute, they were starting to combine some passes and put some stuff together. It was Lewandowski to Olmo to Raphinha, but the shot was blocked. Still, Barcelona was starting to pile it on and find some space against Alaves in transition, particularly when Johnny Otto would be out of position because of coming forward. So a minute after that, Barcelona are able to equalize. It's Balde bursting down the left side. Raphinha with a nice run into the half space. Welcome back, Raphinha. The cutback apparently touched Lewandowski. He got an assist here, I think. And then Olmo whiffed on it, so it didn't touch him. He doesn't get anything from it. But Lamine Yamal was there, popping up and blasting into the net 1-1. And that goal did shift momentum right away. It did feel rather chaotic quite a few times in that first half still, and the second half as well. But it did feel like Barcelona at least were on solid ground. There was a hope and a reliance on Casado and Bernal's chemistry together, having played with Barca Athletic as the starters. And Casado was dropping between the center backs to help stabilize the buildup and be an option for an Alaves press. Another reminder that as Bernal maybe someday will be this singular pivot, but for now, even in a double pivot, he's the midfielder that is farther forward. And that's okay. Let's continue to have him get his footing at first team level. I just wonder if that's who he is in the long term. Either way, for this match, it was Casado deeper and Bernal basically as the box-to-box midfielder. And I did think there were some bright signs with Bernal moving in between the lines when Casado would find him in possession and helping with that build-up to break through those lines, get it to your forwards, and then you're out on the run. Garcia was also really solid with the ball, and not to say that we expect that from him, but hey, he's had some hot and cold performances. I thought this was a good Garcia performance, but the guy I really want to highlight here before we get too far in this 5 headlines is Gerard Martin. As a player who worked as a center back in youth football, he just looks better there as a center back than a left back for me. So I think while I say that left back Gerard Martin is a player that I don't really value, not to say that he's not good enough, but I've said before, I think he's good enough to be starting at left back for all but the top 6-7 teams in the Liga. But I do think that him as a center back could potentially be a depth option for FC Barcelona, and that might be his best position going forward. His positioning still isn't there all the time, but like an Eric Garcia, who has greatly improved in his positioning, I'm reminded that Gerard Martin still has not played that much high-stakes football, and he is still a rather young player. This is all kind of summed up there in the first half where he lost an aerial duel, but he then made up for it better at center back than I thought he would have at left back. He made up for it by closing that ground, sliding in, and even got kicked in the face for his troubles. But hey, again, Gerard Martin, this is a good thumbs-up performance for him. Headline 3 is Joan Garcia and Olmo end-to-end. Thankfully, we know the precise moment when this 3 points of Barcelona was won, and it came actually right before the 2-1. Yes, I know the second goal has to be scored if you get to 3 points, but you get my point. The precise moment that Barcelona took control of this match, if you want to call it control, but at least took the momentum in a way that Alaves were not going to take it back, came because of Joan Garcia. In the 24th minute, Alaves were countering with speed. They had a 3v2. Right back Dani Olmo is again joining the attack, getting in behind Balde, who's pushing forward on the left. The cross comes in, and Joan Garcia goes to ground to take away the option. Well, the ball gets to Johnny anyway, but Joan Garcia from the ground stops the shot with 2 hands. This is insane reflexes. It's a phenomenal save, and a guy that probably won't be starting at the World Cup behind Unai Simon, but I think he's going to get a spot on the plane. He doesn't have it yet, but there is no way that Luis de la Fuente can look around and say, from all my even Premier League goalkeepers and the top other Spanish goalkeepers, that is not the guy that if my normal starter, Unai Simon, goes down, would be the man that I would trust in the World Cup. And that stop gives Barcelona a chance to go the other way, where they immediately punish Alaves. Gerard Martin, another good moment from him, clips a perfect ball over the top to Raphinha, and he cuts it back. And this time, Olmo doesn't miss it. It's a tidy finish, and it's 2-1. In seconds, Barcelona go from almost behind to up at home, and this is the value of an elite shot stopper in a makeshift lineup. It just gives you the confidence that you need, regardless if it's a young lineup or it's a lineup that has not played much together. That guy, that being Joan Garcia, gives you confidence. Headline 4 is tension remained. After the second goal was scored by Barcelona, yes, the match wound up being over, but we definitely didn't know that with the way that the action was going. 29th minute, Lamine Yamal goes down in the box. He had already gone down a few times. And I do want to ask you, because we were divided on the watch along, is this a dive? Was this a foul? Either choice probably would have been wrong, so we play on. And I actually think that's a good no call because of how ambiguous this was. I felt like VAR didn't have enough to overturn it to say it was a PK, but I'm also glad that with the contact that did exist, that Lamine Yamal didn't get a yellow for a dive. I think this is one of those where it's neither fully of either, so play on. 44th minute, speaking of Lamine Yamal, he does everything right, but this counts as a big miss for him for all of his trouble. He, as I said, does so much right here. Plays the 1-2 with Lewandowski, dribbles the keeper, but just hits the outside of the post with his right foot. And if you're wondering, Barcelona's hit a lot of woodworks this year. Yes, they have. They hit the woodwork 14 times this season. The next 3 teams have done it 6 times each. Then the other way, Alaves, with this game still 2-1, had a chance with Lucas Boye, but he also misses, so we play on at 2-1. At halftime, Eric had been hit in the face. Oh, that is just brutal. Someone, again, has broken my nose as many times as I have. It is just brutal. It's so painful before that nose is fixed or the orbital area. Just awful for Eric Garcia. He's pulled at halftime, as is Marc Bernal, who had picked up a yellow in the first half. Was it already decided he was going to play 45? Was it because of the yellow? Either way, he gets yanked for Koundé and Rashford. Olmo drops into the double pivot with Castro, but it is really more of a single pivot with Castro depending on the phase of play. Raphinha moves to the 10 or the right interior again, depending on the phase of play, as Rashford takes the spot on the left. This lineup, in theory, was going to settle Barcelona down, but it didn't really do that. There was still a lot of chaos, but it also meant that Barcelona were still getting chances in that chaos. Lewandowski had a header right at the keeper, but still, there were promising signs that Barcelona continued to be on the front foot. Then headline 5, sealing it late. Come the 60th minute, Pedri makes his return. He's on to the field, as well as Ferran Torres on for Lewandowski and Raphinha. Positive performance from Raphinha, who does look back. We can say that he is back, and I'm with Atletico Madrid on Tuesday, excited that Raphinha looks healthy and fit for Atletico Madrid. That's going to be a match with his name written in pen in that starting lineup. And if you thought Pedri returning, though, would help Barcelona settle down, you would be wrong here. They had more possession in Alaves' final third, sure, but the Alaves transitions were just as prevalent. And I again praise Gerard Martin for the third time in this game for some really tidy tackles and better positioning against the clearances in the second half. Olmo did have a chance to seal it in the 71st, but the cutback from Koundé, that dink from Olmo goes just wide, but you move on. Here comes the sub. Christensen makes his return for all the stuff that's been in the media from Lewandowski's book, which probably is hanging over the potential free agent in the summertime. Again, he makes a cameo here. And then Barcelona looking like they were ready to concede with those changes. And it wasn't really just the changes. Alaves still pushing for the equalizer here. Credit to them. Former Porto man Tony Martinez came in for Alaves, and they loaded up bodies on Balde's side of the field, which also pinned him back to not receive the diagonal out of possession. So it wasn't just Johnny Otto coming in behind Balde, making up for that space. Again, there were multiple bodies, very much just like Chelsea, trying to overload Barcelona's left side and not allow Balde any room to get forward. But instead of equalizing, Alaves concede, and Barcelona seal this game. Olmo, in stoppage time, Alaves threw their numbers toward Balde, but the ball ricochets the other direction. This is what happens when you take that risk. It's picked up by Olmo, and there are acres of space now on the right for Lamine Yamal. He threads the well-weighted pass back to Olmo, and it's a steady finish here. Game over. Olmo's second brace in a Barca uniform, and first since last November against Espanyol. Lamine Yamal is also the first in the Liga to 10 assists. Before we wrap this up, I do have to say that my man of the match was particularly difficult today. I know it seems like a minor little thing, but this is where I do actually want feedback, either on social media or if you're watching on YouTube down in the comments. Raphinha got the award from La Liga, but I think there are two other very strong candidates. If not Raphinha, again, I totally get why he would get it, but for me, Joan Garcia and just one save, but also commanding his box was so essential to Barcelona getting 3 points. I think there's a very fair argument for Joan Garcia. And then, as I mentioned, my man of the match was actually Gerard Martin. And I think it's not so much about what he did versus Raphinha or some of the other players. Of course, when you score 3 goals, you're probably going to give it to somebody that contributes on one of them. But he did. He actually had the pre-assist on the goal that Raphinha assisted on. But either way, Gerard Martin, I thought, had, based on expectations of what we expect from him, to what he actually did, one of his best performances in a Barcelona shirt. So even if La Liga chose Raphinha, I think my Barcelona man of the match was Gerard Martin, based on what we know of him and what he showed us. With Araujo struggling the way that he did against Chelsea, with Christensen having his questions, if Gerard Martin can continue to build some confidence at that position and be able to start not only when Hansi Flick needs him, but maybe in moments that the team actually needs him in big matches, that would be huge. So it could be a jumping off point for Gerard Martin, very much like the Athletic Club match was. So to go from Athletic Club for him to this one against Alaves, it's nothing but positivity for me, for a player that, as I said, at left back, I'm not totally still convinced by. Well, it might be Gerard Martin against Atletico Madrid, but I think it will certainly be Raphinha on Tuesday. So please join me on Big Up for that watch along. And as always, until next time, for some Barça.